When that deep sense of restlessness begins to stir within you, it is not a trivial annoyance, nor is it merely dissatisfaction with a job, a relationship, or the routines of everyday life. It is the signal of something far greater, something fundamental, that is attempting to rise into your awareness. Most people mistake it for depression, or boredom, or even failure. But that unease is not a defect. It is a whisper from the depths of your own consciousness that the life you've been living is too small for the truth of who you are becoming. That discomfort, as painful as it feels, is a threshold. It's the crack in the surface of the ordinary world through which light begins to seep. You have to understand that we are built to survive in structures, social structures, psychological structures, routines that allow us to navigate complexity without being overwhelmed. But over time, those structures become cages. They begin to compress, to suffocate, and what once gave you stability now feels like chains. That is why you feel restless, even though nothing obvious has changed. The world outside may look the same, but the world inside is shaking itself awake. And it will not let you settle for less than truth. The tragedy is that many people silence this discomfort. They drown it in distraction, in endless entertainment, in substances, in busyness. They convince themselves that peace lies in avoiding the whisper. But the whisper does not go away. It grows louder in the silence of the night, when you can no longer lie to yourself. That discomfort is not here to torment you, it is here to guide you. It's your inner consciousness beginning to tug at the limits of your current existence, saying, "This is not all there is. You are not done." And so, when that sense of unease arises, you have two choices. You can ignore it, numb it, and carry on with the same hollow repetitions. Or you can listen. You can recognize it as the beginning of your awakening. Because it is precisely in that discomfort that the possibility of transformation lies. Every great shift in human life begins with the realization that the old skin has grown too tight, and that the only path forward is to shed it. That restless voice within you is not an enemy, it is the first sign that your quantum consciousness is stirring, demanding that you expand, evolve, and step into the fullness of who you are meant to be. You start noticing patterns, subtle at first, almost invisible if you weren't paying attention. The same arguments repeating in different relationships, the same mistakes dressed in new circumstances, the same cycle of starting with enthusiasm and then abandoning the effort halfway through. At one time, you would have called this bad luck, or blamed it on other people, or shrugged it off as coincidence. But when your consciousness begins to wake up, you can no longer dismiss it so easily. Suddenly, you can see the loops for what they are, your own unconscious programming playing itself out over and over again, like a script you didn't even know you were following. This moment is both uncomfortable and liberating. Uncomfortable because once you see the pattern, you can't pretend anymore that you're innocent, that life just happens to you. No, you begin to realize that you are complicit in your own repetitions. But liberating, because the very act of seeing means you're no longer fully inside the loop, you've stepped outside, if only for a moment, and observed it. That distance is the beginning of freedom. Most people never get there. They drift through life blind to the cycles they're trapped in, blaming circumstance or fate. But when you become conscious of the recurring themes in your life, that is evidence that your awareness is stretching beyond the surface level. You're starting to access a deeper dimension of perception, one that notices structure instead of noise, meaning instead of chaos. And that's not a small shift. It is the mind beginning to move from survival mode into creative mode, from reaction into authorship. You can feel it, the possibility that you are not bound to the loop forever, that you have the power to rewrite it. Then comes the collapse of old certainties, and this is where the process truly shakes you to your core. What you once believed to be unshakable truths, the assumptions you lived by, the rules you thought the world was built upon, suddenly, they don't feel solid anymore. A career path that seemed unquestionable begins to feel hollow. Values you inherited from culture, family, or tradition no longer carry the same weight. The institutions and systems that you once trusted appear fragile, sometimes even deceptive. And this collapse, though terrifying, is not chaos for its own sake. It is the necessary dismantling of a structure that has outlived its usefulness. This stage feels like standing on shifting ground. The safety of certainty is gone, and in its place is doubt, confusion, and sometimes despair. But here is the paradox. It is only when your old foundation cracks that you are forced to search for something deeper, something truer. If the walls of your comfortable illusions had never fallen apart, you would have remained asleep within them. The collapse is not punishment, it is an invitation. Think about it. A child must outgrow their toys, a student must outgrow their textbooks, and in the same way, you must outgrow the worldview that once carried you. It served you when you needed it, but now it confines you. Awakening is rarely gentle because it requires a death of sorts, the death of the old self, the old perspective, the old story you told yourself about how reality works. And yes, this is frightening. To watch your belief system dissolve is to lose your compass. But the gift hidden in this collapse is possibility. When the old order crumbles, it makes space for a higher order to emerge. You no longer cling to rigid certainties, you begin to live in inquiry, in curiosity, in openness to what might be. That is where real growth happens. Because only when the ground beneath you gives way do you discover the wings you've had all along. And that moment, when the false structures fall and you glimpse the horizon of something larger, that is when you know your consciousness is not dying but awakening. You begin to notice that the applause doesn't move you anymore. The validation that once felt sweet suddenly tastes empty, and the opinions of others, which once dictated your choices, no longer carry the same authority. Instead, you start hearing a quieter but more persistent voice inside you, a voice that doesn't negotiate, doesn't flatter, and doesn't care about appearances. That voice is authenticity calling you back to yourself. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. This is the stage where the masks you've worn for years begin to slip. The roles you played to fit in, the compromises you made to keep peace, the false versions of yourself you displayed to be accepted, all of them grow unbearable. It's not that you suddenly despise other people's opinions, it's that you finally recognize their limits. No one else can define your worth or your purpose, because both are born within you. And here lies the tension. Living authentically is harder than living for approval. Approval gives you the illusion of safety, but authenticity demands courage. It demands that you step away from the familiar and risk rejection, misunderstanding, even isolation. But the cost of ignoring authenticity is far greater, because every time you silence that inner voice, you betray yourself. This shift is not arrogance, it's alignment. It's the realization that truth, no matter how inconvenient, is more valuable than conformity. And as your consciousness awakens, you feel the weight of this choice. Will you keep living as a reflection of what others expect, or will you dare to live as the original you were meant to be? That decision marks the difference between merely existing and truly awakening. Strange things begin to happen when your consciousness shifts, things you would have once dismissed as coincidences. A thought crosses your mind and within hours, you encounter it in conversation or see it written somewhere unexpected. You think about someone, and suddenly they call you. Events begin to align in improbable ways, and the timing of things feels almost orchestrated. These moments, subtle yet powerful, are what we call synchronicities. They are not accidents, They are signs that your inner state is beginning to resonate with the deeper patterns of reality. When you were asleep, you didn't notice them. Life looked random, chaotic, disconnected. But now, as your awareness sharpens, you see connections where before there was only noise. It's as if reality itself is responding to your awakening, reflecting back to you the truth that you are not a separate observer but a participant in the unfolding of existence. And this realization can be exhilarating, even unsettling, because it suggests that the boundary between your inner world and the outer world is thinner than you imagined. These signs are not guarantees, nor are they magical shortcuts. They are mirrors. They show you that when your mind becomes clearer, the world becomes clearer. When your intentions align with authenticity, the universe seems to align with you. And while it might feel mysterious, it is also deeply logical. You notice opportunities more readily when you are awake than when you are lost in distraction. You draw connections faster, and so life itself feels more meaningful, more coherent, more alive. The danger, of course, is to become obsessed with the signs, to chase them instead of understanding them. The point is not to glorify the patterns but to recognize what they reveal, that consciousness and reality are interwoven, that your awakening changes not just how you see the world but how the world meets you. The synchronicities are invitations, reminders that you are on the threshold of a deeper participation in life. They are not the destination, they are the signal. And when you learn to walk with awareness, you will see them everywhere, guiding you quietly, affirming that your quantum consciousness is no longer sleeping, it is alive and moving in rhythm with the universe itself. Awakening is never simply a gift of light and ease, it comes with a weight, and that weight is responsibility. When your consciousness rises, you can no longer cling to the illusion that life is happening to you. You see with undeniable clarity that your choices matter, that every word, every action, every hesitation ripples outward into the world. Freedom is not freedom without consequence, and this is where many falter, because the awareness that you are a co-creator of your reality is as heavy as it is liberating. Once you awaken, excuses dissolve. You can no longer point to circumstance, luck, or other people as the sole architects of your condition. That knowledge is terrifying, because it means you are accountable for what you become. But it is also the doorway to power, because within that accountability lies the ability to reshape your life. Responsibility and liberation are two sides of the same coin, and you cannot have one without the other. And so the burden becomes the test. Will you shrink from it, longing to return to ignorance, or will you shoulder it and walk forward into creation? The path of awakening demands courage. The courage to stand alone in your truth, the courage to act when it would be easier to remain passive, the courage to carry the weight of your own potential. This is the cost of awakening, but it is also the reward. For to live without responsibility is to drift, but to embrace it is to step fully into the role you were meant to play, not as a victim of chance, but as a conscious being shaping reality with intention. That is the moment your awakening ceases to be theory and becomes life itself.